Project managers, have you ever felt like you should get that promotion or a better job? Start a business. Write that book. Have you ever felt you were made for more but didn't know where to start?
Welcome to the PM for the Masses podcast with your host, Cesar.
Learn from the experts. Think outside the box. Have a voice, network, and be extraordinary.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome. My name is Cesar, your host, and this show is your regular reminder that your career matters more than your job and that your life is a project and you are the manager. Whether you work for a company or for yourself, your job stability is really just your ability to land your next gig. So, join me in practicing intentional, planned, and value-adding relevance, starting right now. Well, my friends, today I am hosting the show by myself. It's a Saturday and Tracy couldn't join us. It was kind of a last minute anyway. So I'm just here by myself today, and our guest today, Jason Evanish. Jason is the CEO and co-founder, actually the CEO and founder, there's no co-founder, of GetLighthouse.com, which is software and a blog dedicated to helping people be awesome managers. They help managers in over 20 different countries around the world have better one-on-ones, grow their team members, and be more thoughtful leaders every day. And Jason is on the line with me today from his office in San Francisco, California. Hello, Jason. How are you?
I'm great, Cesar. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thank you. We feel like we're having a one-on-one here right now.
We kind of are.
We kind of are, which is the topic of today's conversation. And this might be a new topic to some of the people listening right now because, you know, in the project management world, we were just talking about this, Jason, before I press the record button here, that a lot of times we get teams formed for a specific project, and it's like go for a few weeks, and then we deliver, and then we move on to the next project and it's a different team. So we don't get to have these one-on-one conversations with team members. And you have a similar experience in your career, correct?
Yeah. So, you know, in addition to being the CEO and a founder of a startup now that obviously has me wearing many hats, my career has been in product management. And so in product management, you obviously have to work with a lot of people who you do not have direct authority over. And so the best way to get things done is through, you know, essentially what I like to think of as positive influence and getting other people's buy-in. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, but one of them definitely, and I'm sure we can dive in during this conversation into exactly how, but one of the best ways to do that is by building relationships, which can come from things like one-on-ones.
Okay. So so you would say then it's perhaps even more important for one-on-ones to happen in the context of a project or a product management situation.
I would say that it's a tool that's useful in a lot of different situations, and this is one that I think people underrate, but I think they're important in all scenarios.
Okay, so how would you define then a one-on-one meeting? I guess how would you define it?
Sure, a one-on-one is a meeting between two people and only two people, where the goal is usually to talk about things that normally there isn't time for in your day-to-day work with that person.
Okay. For example?
Sure. For example, if you have direct reports, this is a time to give them feedback and coaching that you've been meaning to get around to. It's time to talk about their career growth and development. It's a time to get to know them a little bit better and talk about things that are important to them. And it's also obviously to hear feedback from them. At the same time, if you're, say, having one with a peer or you're a project manager meeting with someone that you're managing, you may not talk as much about their career, though it may be interesting and relevant to know what people are excited to work on your project and how you may be able to help them build a skill. And then also, it's an opportunity to just deepen that relationship because in the end, we're humans, we're not robots. And so if you have the choice between working with someone who you feel like understands who you are and, you know, treats you like another human and you can kind of be friendly, you're going to have a better experience than if it feels like it's a stranger that just passes you, you know, robotic instructions over the wall.
Right. Yeah, I really believe in that. I much prefer working with folks who trust each other, right? And trust myself, even because even you will drop the ball sometimes, right? And I think it's a lot easier to get sympathy when that happens, when you're working among people who know you and know where you're coming from and so they know your intentions when you perhaps, fail here and there, because I think we all do at some point.
Absolutely. My father runs a business, an accounting firm in Pennsylvania, and he has a staff of like 80 people. And in accounting, the average tenure is about 3.5 years, but at my dad's company, it's over 17.
Oh, wow.
And so he's one of the people that definitely inspired me with Lighthouse, and just in general, how I try and lead other people. And one of the rules that he has that he taught me was something called the emotional savings account. And the emotional savings account is this idea that every person who works with you or for you, you have an emotional savings account with, and you build it up and you make deposits when you do things with goodwill, when you show you care about them, when you invest in them, and when you fix problems that were bothering them and show you're listening and paying attention. All of those things, every time you do something good, you're making a deposit in that emotional savings account.
Right.
But the important thing is that you also have withdrawals from the emotional savings account. And so when you either have to make difficult decisions, or you do something that does bother them, or you just trip and make a mistake, because we are all human, like you suggested, then that's the scenario where you're really glad you've built up a lot of savings, because you can cash into it.
Yeah.
And you use that as a benefit. And so a lot of people, unfortunately, I think, don't make any deposits at all on the emotional savings accounts with the people they work with. And so it's very easy for people to get frustrated or have a negative mindset and things like that with them, because there is none of that positive connection built. Right.
Yes. That resonates. And that's fascinating for me to hear, because it's, I see that in my work, right? So I find, like, if I do something on a regular basis that shows a narrative about me as a manager, right? If something happens in my life that I need to take a week off, or let's say I couldn't do that one thing for 2-3 weeks for whatever reason, in people's minds, I'm still doing that, even though I haven't done it in 2-3 weeks, because the narrative, there's I guess I'm still withdrawing from that account, right? So it pays in the long term, I found, to build that rapport, build a relationship with folks. So, when it's time for you to ask for a favor, or ask somebody to go, the extra mile or whatever, then you have that buffer.
Absolutely. One of my all-time favorite management quotes is from the CEO of Pepsi, this woman named Indra Nooyi. And it's all about this idea of like assuming positive intent. Because as she put it, like, whatever anybody says or does, assume positive intent. You'll be amazed at how your whole approach at a person or problem becomes very different. When you assume negative intent, you're angry. If you take away that anger and assume positive intent, you'll be amazed. Now, that's great when you think about working with somebody who maybe has upset you and trying to like reframe your mind. But in my experience, when you work with people and you do have that emotional savings account built up, you'll automatically have a positive intent, because like, oh, you know what? Cesar has 3 kids, and of course, he might have to take some time off when all of them are sick at the same time. I totally understand and give him the benefit of the doubt. Versus if you don't know anything about Cesar and you don't really have any kind of relationship and you don't feel like they care about you, then it's very easy to be like, oh, that jerk. Like, of course, he's definitely doing this on purpose. And that totally is going to let me poison my relationship with them and the mindset I have to everything good or bad that they do.
Right. And I think we've all had that one boss who came across that way, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure some of them did have a negative intent. Maybe they were out to get you, or they trying to use you as a stepping stone to get somewhere. But I think most times people are good people, but because they don't open up and they don't work on building that relationship, then we don't know, and we just assume the worst.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's say for folks who are already trying to do this one-on-one on a regular basis, first of all, what have you found is the optimal frequency for these meetings, the one-on-ones?
So I'm going to caveat this, realizing that the audience is sometimes they're going to have direct reports, and sometimes they're going to be just trying to manage a project with people. And so I have different recommendations based on that. Okay. So with your direct reports, I think you absolutely have to meet with them weekly or biweekly. This is because when you are in charge of everything about their career and all the work they're doing, and you have to write performance reviews and things like that. There's just so much to cover once you start to fully understand all of the good things you can accomplish in these meetings, that you need to have them on that regular basis so that you're making regular progress and nothing can get too big and blow up in your face. Because, just think about how much changes from one month to the next. What were you doing in May that if you hadn't dealt with, how big a problem could it be in June? So if you have direct reports, I really think you have to do weekly or biweekly.
Okay.
If you're managing a project, or you have, peers that you want to have better relationships with, or that you have to really collaborate well with, or there are people on a team that don't report to you, but you want to make sure things are all good, I think somewhere between every 2 to 4 weeks works. And you should just adjust it based on how often you're doing things with them and the importance of the responsibility. So for instance, for myself as a product manager, I realize my responsibilities are a little different than a project manager, but I think it's close enough as a corollary. I know in my experience, there are certain people I need to meet with every 2 weeks. So for instance, at a past job, I was meeting with the customer success team every 2 weeks because I knew that there was always new problems coming up that they were dealing with on a regular basis. And I wanted to be sure I got their input so that product wasn't spending all its time on new features and never fixing the problems that success was spending their whole time responding and teaching people bad workarounds. And so I wanted to make sure we fostered that relationship with them. And so every 2 weeks was a good idea. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, when I had certain engineers that maybe I worked with that I only had, some projects with, but not always working and doing things with them often, well, once a month actually worked really well. Now, I made sure those once a month meetings were a full hour because I realized that generally, in order to get into things, build relationships, feel like it's okay to make a little small talk and stuff, it was good to have an hour with them, but once a month was a good cadence. And at the same time, for the more frequent ones, it became easier where sometimes we just didn't have that much to talk about. So we would end it early and maybe it would only take 20 or 30 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I think those are good guidelines. And I found also that depending on the person you're doing this with, they might require it every week. Sometimes it's a little bit more hand-holding, or especially at the beginning of the relationship, yes. I found that weekly is really good.
Yes.
And then once you get to that point that once a week becomes becomes like something you must do, and there's actually not really a whole lot of updates since last week, then maybe it's time to move to bi-weekly. That's my experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. When someone's new to the company, depending on how good your onboarding is, it can be really alienating or scary or just uncertain. And so anyone who takes the time to meet and check in how somebody's doing, see what questions they have and support them, can be great. For instance, I've always spent a lot of time with the designers I work with as a product manager. And so especially when someone's new, I spend a ton of time with them. And I try to make sure it's not just like handing off work and bringing them up to speed, but also seeing how they're doing. So I think that's really great advice, Cesar, to start out weekly if someone's brand new to the company or brand new to your team. Or if you're having difficulty with someone, meeting more often is the best way to kind of unmortgage some debt you may have in an emotional savings account.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the metaphor keeps going. It's a good one. Okay, so what are some of the things people do wrong when, I'm going to do one-on-ones and they hit the ground running? But have you found that some things are better kept some discussions better kept outside of one-on-ones? Or what are some of the things people do wrong with one-on-ones?
I think there's a few different things that people do with one-on-ones that go wrong. First and foremost is way too many managers make them status updates. So if you meet with somebody and you turn it into just a general project discussion, you're not going to get the benefit out of one-on-ones. You're going to end up looking back and realizing what was the difference between this and having a group project meeting where at least everybody would have heard what we talked about. What you want to do is realize that when you're meeting with someone one-on-one, you should use that time to talk about things that you wouldn't talk about in a group meeting or a group setting, because that's when you can actually efficiently deal with those things. So I think it's really important to realize that you're not coming in to talk about projects. You're coming in to talk about all the things, all the human things around those projects. So specific to a project manager, some of the things I think would instantly be good is getting their feedback on how they feel the project is progressing or what they feel like are frustrating things going on in the project. Let them vent a little bit and understand where maybe they have blockers you weren't aware of. Then you can possibly dig into just your general relationship with them. Build rapport. Do you know anything about them? If you don't, maybe you should find out. Both because It makes your relationship more human. But also, let's say that the person does something really awesome and you want to thank them. Well, if you've gotten to know what's important to them and like a little bit about them, you can know what might be a really inexpensive gift that you could get them that would show your gratitude, or something you can do to demonstrate you care. And those sorts of things, you don't realize how powerful they are until you get the chance to use them. But a one-on-one is a perfect time to work on all of those relationship things that are just, hey, we're human and we need to work together, but we're also human, which means that like there's a craving of connection there. And the best way to create that connection is to take the time to invest in it through the conversations that you have in these kinds of meetings.
Right. Yes, I agree with that. And that's, little things that, I'll give you an example, right? And this is something I learned from you and your tool. So full credit to you. I know the name of the pets of the people who work with me. It's very important to them, as it should be. And I was out traveling, and I was at a restaurant and looking at the menu, and one of the menu items, the name of the item was the same name as one of my folks' pet, right? So I took a picture of it and I saved it. And then exactly a couple days, like 2 days later, right? We're having a little bit of a difficulty at work, and this person was frustrated. It's like, hey, I give her a ping, hey, let's talk about this. Before we talk about that, I saw this the other day and I thought of you, and I sent her the picture, right? And immediately the conversation started with a laugh, right? And then we could, I felt like we were way more open to talk about the problem at hand because, hey, we got that going on. We have that personal connection there.
That's a great story. I love that. The funniest thing too about that is the comedian John Cleese. You of course have seen him in everything from Bond movies as Q to Monty Python. Mm-hmm. He's an amazing talk about creativity. How does someone like him have an entire career of so many jokes and so much humor? How did he do that? And so his whole talk is about that. And what I love about it is he talks about how to get started, the most important thing is actually laughter. So he literally is like, if you're going to sit down for like 90 minutes with somebody to work on something creative, the first thing you want to do is make yourself laugh. Make the group laugh, because once you laugh, it kind of removes some of those inhibitions and relaxes everybody and removes tension from the room and sets you up to have a much more productive discussion. So you found that, Cesar, with that picture of the menu. And I think in general, especially for project managers, I think even getting beyond one-on-ones, it's a lesson to remember that it's not goofing off to spend a few minutes and making the team loosen up a little bit. It can actually be really productive and then get down to business.
Okay, very cool. And John Cleese is a great example because he's kind of a controversial guy these days with his opinions about political correctness, and he can always talk about those things, while a lot of other comedians can't. They get shunned or they get fired. He keeps getting gigs, and people still love him. So I think he has a great. His point is valid. He's make it fun, and then people listen to you.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that he was in any controversy, but the good news is that this talk that I love, and I'll send you a link, Cesar, so you can include in the show notes. Sure. It's like from someplace in Germany in I think 1994, and somebody uploaded the VHS video to YouTube or something. So this is from long ago, but I think it still resonates today.
Very cool. So so here's the thing then. We should then dedicate some time during these meetings to just talk about life. Where is the line there between making that a productive time versus, hey, versus the team member thinking, oh man, my team lead or my project lead is just wasting my time for the way. Why do we have to do this? So is there a line there? How much time, or is that, does it change from person to person? Is there like a rule that we can start applying?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it varies person to person. Some people are going to be super introverted and very private in their lives, and so they're not going to want to tell you a whole lot. Other people, though, are dying for that connection and love that you'll ask them a little bit about their life. And so for those people, you're going to want different approaches. For the person that's very private, you may want to keep the small talk lighter and just focus on whatever topic they seem to be comfortable with. That's why as a manager, it's helpful to come loaded with a few potential questions that you can ask, because that way if one doesn't hit, you can ask another. Obviously one of the easiest ones is just to ask people, hey, how was your weekend? Or what did you do with the holiday break? Or if they just got back from vacation, how was the vacation? Like those sorts of ones are real softball ones, but generally people are going to be more willing to open up because it's a natural question they get asked from other people, and it can reveal things about them because, for instance, if they go on vacation and they have children, that's probably going to come up in it. And then that opens up, it's more safe and reasonable to ask a little bit about their kids. Oh, how old are your kids? Did they miss school for this, or, whatever, and things like that, where you can start to open up and learn a little bit more. So for the more introverted or private people, you may have to try a few different things to see kind of what threads they're comfortable talking about and then kind of stick to those. On the flip side then, for the people who are more extroverted or just love to talk about these sorts of things, then you probably actually need to rein it in a little bit where, you can ask a little bit, but you're not there to, gossip and have coffee for 30 minutes just talking about what they're doing personally. So then at that point, then, you want to ask a little bit and then look for that natural breaking point and being like, that's really great. That's really interesting, comment on something they said or share how something about you is similar. And then kind of transition to, cool, another thing I wanted to cover while we were meeting today is, this project or this situation or this thing that's coming up, and so it gives you an opportunity to transition. But I think starting the meeting by a little bit of rapport building is powerful, and you can kind of like time box that into anywhere from 2 to 15 minutes of your discussion.
Great. So what are some of the things that we need to this? Like one thing is rapport building, things like, is there anything else that we should make part of our one-on-ones on a regular basis?
Absolutely. Rapport is super important. You want to build that foundation of trust and understanding of who they are and frankly, what motivates them. Because if you know what motivates them, it can help you frame what you're trying to do with them. That is exactly how you get that buy-in and influence with people, is when you understand what really drives them, you can start to see where, wow, this thing that no one else wants to do, they're actually really excited by. I would be very, very wise to take this project, this piece of the project, and give it to the person who'd be excited rather than give it to any of the people on the team who wouldn't be excited about that. So taking time to get to know some of those things is super powerful, but that's not the only thing. I think also understanding a little bit about career development and personal growth they're working on is super powerful. Because if you're their direct manager, obviously it's your responsibility to have that conversation with them and help them make progress. Everybody should own their career, but it's the manager who in the end is probably going to be and should be the biggest advocate for when the person is ready, or to help make sure that that person is making progress and working on the right things to help them get there. If you're not the manager, though, it can still be helpful to understand what people's career goals are at a high level, because then you can find out how to put people on projects they're interested and excited in, and that can help them get the experience they need to take that next step or learn and work in that area they're excited to, and take advantage of that. Also, it helps to get to know them from a perspective of like how they interact with the rest of the team. So if you start to understand that like two people have an issue working together, helping understand whether it makes sense for you to coach them on how to handle the situation. Oh, this person's extremely different from you. Here's where they're coming from. Maybe you can try this next time you're in a situation with them. That sort of coaching can be super powerful, whether you're their boss or you're, managing them in a project scenario so you don't have that influence. Understanding the dynamics of your team is a great conversation for a project manager so that you understand who works really well together and who may be struggling, because the culture of your team, the attitude of your team, and the mindset that everybody has working or not working well together is going to dramatically impact how your team collaborates, how quickly you can get projects done and all that. You want yourself to be a well-oiled machine, and that's not just cranking out code or getting support tickets done. It's also how everyone interacts and whether people are actively want to collaborate or actively avoiding collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Oh, goodness, this is so this is like 90% of getting anything done,
right?
And we don't learn this in school, and this is why whenever I've seen the power of the one-on-one in my team, and I've heard it from other leads as well, from other project leads, project managers. Whenever I see an opportunity like this, I just want to talk about it and bring it to everyone's attention. And I've mentioned here on the show several times before that, a lot of project managers, they stumble into this role. They start as an engineer type, or IT person who are, and these folks are object oriented, or we like math and we like gadgets and we like, calculus. And then we do so well, and then they promote us to managers, and now we have to deal with people, and it's a completely different thing. And we're not trained to do that. So,
no.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So
every manager, anyone with the manager title, project manager, product manager, engineering manager, unfortunately, virtually none of them are given any training on how to handle the people side of things. And it's not surprising then that creates a lot of hidden and not so hidden problems for companies and teams.
Right. Yes. And that's why when come across a tool or any resource that can help us grow in that direction, I just want to share with everybody. And Lighthouse and your blog is certainly, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I just want to make sure everybody's visiting the show notes for today's episode. It's pmforthemasses.com/116. 116. So pmforthemasses.com/116. And I'll have links there for the things that we're talking about here. All right. So let's say some people listening right now, there's quite a few who are not doing this. They are project managers or they're team managers or they're product managers. And they're thinking maybe I should start doing one-on-ones with my team. How would you approach introducing this idea so it's not like, oh, here's one more thing we got to do?
Absolutely. So I would start out by just telling people the reason why you want to do it. So that usually means, hey, I'd like us to start meeting, say, every 2 weeks for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, depending on the culture of your company, what a standard meeting is. But tell them, hey, I would like to start having these semi-regular meetings. It's an opportunity for you and I to get on the same page, to give and receive feedback for each other, and to work to improve how the team and we function working together. Your work is important to me, and I want to know that you are important to me. And so this meeting is meant to be a time for us to have discussions in private, since it's one-on-one, that we may not be able to discuss openly in the group. And so I would appreciate if you would come with an open mind and we can try this out. We can adjust the frequency and the topics we discuss based on how it goes. But these are a really great opportunity, and in my career, I found that they work really well. I think from that kind of statement, writing up something like that, sending them a quick email and a calendar invite, just have the first meeting. Don't send them a recurring invite yet. Just have the first meeting and use it as an opportunity to start to build that rapport, start to fill that emotional savings account, start to listen, because they may have something bottled up they've been dying to tell you, and now you just finally gave them a chance. So just be prepared that you might hear some of that. And then in the meeting, introduce the idea like, hey, you know what? We learned a lot today. I would really like to make this a regular meeting. Is it cool if I put something as a placeholder on our calendar every 2 weeks to talk like this? We can always, change the frequency going forward, but I'd love to make sure that we make time to keep having these kinds of discussions.
Great tips. Very good. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about Lighthouse.
Sure.
Tell us what the tool does. I know what it does. But folks listening, if they haven't checked it out yet, how does it work? What does it do? And what is the benefit of using a tool like that instead of just writing down things on a piece of paper?
Sure. So Lighthouse came from my own challenges as a manager, realizing that there are all these soft skill habits you need to have, but nobody teaches you them. And they're very easy to let slip because the amount of time you have to invest in your people in a given week is unfortunately a very small portion of your week. And so the whole goal with Lighthouse is to nudge you and remind you to do the right things, teach you the right things if you don't know them, and make it easier to stay on top of all that stuff as you move forward throughout the week, and so that you can make the most of these discussions. And so our product focuses on a few things. One is having better one-on-ones. So we'll do everything from give you great questions to ask your team, to help you manage the agenda, to prepare you for the meeting, and then help you with follow-ups afterwards. Because it's really important that if you have this discussion and great things come out of it, that you actually keep your promises and do them. Otherwise, people are like, why are we meeting? I tell you stuff and you don't act on. So we want to make sure that you avoid that sort of scenario. We also help with things like planning out career development for people, because especially if you're a manager and people directly report to you, it's really important to help them make incremental progress on their careers, because otherwise they will look for that career growth on their own, and that can very likely lead to them going to another company to grow. And you don't want that to happen. And the best way to avoid that is then to have that conversation. And your one-on-one's a great time to do it, which is why we put it together. And then the third part of our product is all about that building rapport, that emotional savings account. I don't know about you, Cesar, but my memory isn't always so great, even for stuff that's important to me. And so I find writing it down helps. And so if I can write it down in the same place where I'm doing all these other soft skills, it can be super helpful. So our product focuses on rapport, helping people with long-term goals, and having better one-on-ones. And we find that improves the relationship of the team. It can help you be recognized as a good leader and manager in your organization. And most importantly, have your team and you work more effectively together.
Awesome. Yeah, one of the things the tool does a lot of things, a lot of cool things. It syncs with your calendar. So if you set the schedule for your one-on-ones, it immediately shows up in the tool when the next one is. One feature that I really enjoy too is the when you add to do, like let's say you're talking to your team member and you as their manager, you promise, okay, I'm going to look into this for you. I'm going to ask so-and-so about, that promotion opportunity or whatever. So you can create a task for you, and they can see it. They can see the task that you created for yourself in there, and you can sync that to your preferred task management. Like I use OmniFocus, so you would get sent to OmniFocus, and so I would have a task in my personal productivity system. I also used it for suggestions for questions that I could ask them. So. What do you like the most about working here? Things like that. There's a list of questions there. So really helpful. It's all in one solution for this situation. And then there's the blog too, right? Tell us about the blog.
Sure. So when I started Lighthouse, I started to realize that there was a really great opportunity to even go beyond what we do in the product to teach people to be better managers. I wanted to write the blog that I wish someone had given me when I started my career in management and leading other people. And so we've really focused the blog on tons of how-tos, explaining scenarios and studies that are relevant to managers, and trying to give people access to the data and information that will help them better understand, not just tell you, hey, do this and this because I said so, but say, hey, here's the research, here's the best practice from an expert that you would know. We've featured people like Patty McCord, who helped build the Netflix culture, or Andy Grove, who's one of my all-time favorite leaders, and he built Intel from nothing to a $20 billion company. There's all these great leaders out there that have amazing stories on how they made it as leaders. And so we love featuring some of those lessons and insights so that you realize that, as a general rule in our blog, if we can't find a study and an inspirational leader or someone who's really succeeded, we generally don't talk about the practice, because we want to make sure that it really works in the wild and will really help you. You have to figure Pixar has put out more quality movies than I think any studio in the history ever. And so, if it's good enough for Ed Catmull and the Pixar team, like they wrote about in a great book called Creativity Inc., we figure it probably will work for you, especially if we also know a couple of, psychology studies that back up the principle of why it seemed to work the way they wrote about it in their book. So we try and use the blog as a place to teach people for free, just saying, hey, we want there to be more good managers in this world, because there are literally dozens of people that depend on managers every day, that their life will be better if their manager is better. And so that's really what inspires me every day. It's why I'm on this podcast here with Cesar. And so we love the opportunity to help those people. And then, of course, hey, we are a business. So we love that this is a way to introduce people to the ideas and things that we think are important. And later, it's inbound marketing for our business. And so it ends up working out where we can pay it forward to people with our blog, and it eventually leads to good things happening for us as a business and people trying out Lighthouse.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So, Jason, I vouch for your product, vouch for you. And because you're the head of the company, every time I emailed support, I got a message from you, which is great. So if people want to learn more about Lighthouse and more about you, what's the best place to go?
I would say getlighthouse.com is obviously to learn about our product a little bit. Sign up for a free trial. You can use it for 21 days risk-free. So that's a great way for you to see if it fits for you. And if you want to learn more about being a good manager and just general good leadership concepts, getlighthouse.com/blog is our blog. And I'm, of course, on LinkedIn. I'll give you a link to all these things for the show notes, Cesar. But these are great ways to see more of the kind of stuff we've talked about, because I love geeking out on this stuff. And so that's exactly the kind of topics that end up on our blog.
Fantastic. And like Jason said, we're going to have links to all these on our website at pmforthemasses.com/116. And while you find connections, all the links there, we can find the tool, you can find the blog, and also connect with Jason. Jason, this was a lot of value bombs here, so thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Cesar. And it's awesome that you're on episode 116. That is a huge accomplishment. So I'm really honored I get to be a part of the long line of great episodes.
Thank you for that. And it's great to have you. And I don't know, I think I might have to have you again, because this is not enough time to cover all the things I'd like to cover. Wait for another message from you sometime soon.
All right, that sounds great. I'd love to do it. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
Tune in next week for more great ideas on how to manage your projects better and truly stand out in your industry.
PMforthemasses.com